So I said around the time that the dogs went in to do their search around the property and everything, that things seem to be speeding up in this case. And I do believe that we are going to see a resolution. I do believe we are going to get answers in terms of what happened to Lily and Jack. And I do believe, and it seems quite clear from everything we're hearing, that those answers are going to revolve around Daniel Martel. Now, I have a little bit of advice here for Malaya Brooks Murray, on the off chance that she's listening to this or that someone close to her is listening to this. And my advice is this: once arrests start being made, it is too late to make a deal. There is a good chance that every person involved with the disappearance of these children is going to do jail time. And that includes Malaya if she has not actually spoken to the RCMP and told them the truth about what happened. And she can only do that before this investigation reaches a point where an arrest is made. Because once an arrest is made, all deals are off the table. They don't need to make a deal with you to help them make their arrest. So you will most likely also end up doing time. Yes, in the short term, you having knowledge of what happened and not telling people is probably going to impact on your custody of your daughter. Long term, you staying silent and not speaking to the RCMP before an arrest is made is almost going to guarantee that you never regain custody of your daughter and that she spends the rest of her youth in the foster system. Not only that, when Meadow is old enough to want to find out about her brother and sister, she's going to start doing the research herself. And she's going to find all the information online that is currently here and about. What is she going to know about her parents? Malaya could come forward and speak out. And at least then, down the track, when Meadow decides to research what happened to her siblings, she might learn that actually her mother spoke out for her siblings and did the right thing. I wonder what she would think if she found out that her mother continued to hide the truth. So while we have received some documents this week that have been less redacted, it seems that there's even more of these documents that have been accessed by the media. And the latest bit of news to come out is more details about the overnight trips, the night before the children were reported missing. So I'm going to start with who I feel is becoming my favourite news reporter in this case, that is Angela McIver. And let's hear what she has to share in terms of what information they have found out.
For the first time, we're hearing detailed accounts from neighbors who were awake in the quiet hours before 4-year-old Jack and 6-year-old Lily Sullivan disappeared from their home in Pictou County. The children were reported missing from their home at 10:01 on the morning of Friday, May 2nd. According to court documents, neighbor Brad Wong told police he heard a loud vehicle coming and going 3 or 4 times after midnight and into the early hours of the morning.
So we have previously heard this account from the Globe and Mail when they related the story that was given to them by a neighbour saying pretty much the same thing. and I will bring that up after we finish watching this news article. There's also a new Globe and Mail article that goes further into the details provided to them by both neighbours, which has just dropped. You've probably already seen information about this on Daphne's channel because I'm recording this part here before I head out for the afternoon. So by the time you get this video, most people will have already covered this, and I've basically just sent a copy of the article to Daphne, so I'm going to guess that by now, by the time you're watching this video, she's probably already covered it. There's a lot of really good information in that article from what I've just had a look at.
Wong said his house is at an elevated position from the children's home on Gairloch Road in Lansdowne, and he could see vehicle lights over the treetops. He said the vehicle would drive off in the distance, and he could hear it stop and then return. He said it remained in earshot the entire time. Another neighbor, Justin Smith, told RCMP that at 1:30 a.m., he heard a car turn around by the railroad tracks near the area of Gairloch Road and Lansdowne Station Road. He said it made a noise, then the vehicle was quiet for about 2 minutes, then drove off towards Lairg Road. Smith told police he later spoke with Wong, who informed him the vehicle was the children's stepfather, Daniel Martel. The court records also detail Martel's account of the evening. He told police he went to bed fairly early and didn't wake up until light the next morning. The document said the children's mother, Malaya Brooks Murray, told police she went to bed around 9 p.m. She said Martel stayed up and she doesn't know what he did. Brooks Murray has not responded to our request for comment. In several interviews, though, Martel has told CBC he had nothing to do with the children's disappearance. And in a phone interview Friday, Martel said no one from the family left the property that night and they did not have any visitors.
I didn't do anything. I know Malaya didn't do anything. I know my mother didn't do anything. Those are 3 people on the property. I mean, after the polygraph exams, they should have known right there. We didn't kill any of the kids, or we didn't kill the kids.
RCMP says the case is still being investigated under the Missing Persons Act and is not a criminal case. Angela McIver, CBC News, Halifax.
So it looks like the RCMP aren't going to actually label this a criminal case until they're making an arrest. And then it's going to be a criminal case. Because blind Freddie can see that this is definitely... The children did not wander off into the woods. The children were not abducted. The children were not picked up by someone organised by Malaya Brooks Murray. The children, something happened to those children on the Thursday night. And we have 2 neighbours now who we know now as witnesses. Now, I'm not going to show the location that I believe is the other neighbour because I haven't verified that. But I do believe that this Brad Wong is in the other direction. The house sort of further back along Gairloch Road. That's the only property I can find where I could imagine someone being able to see the headlights of the car through the trees. And it makes sense because you've got that road between them. So just to give you a bit of a visual here, you have on the far right there, obviously, 1407 Gairloch Road. On the same side as 1407 in that big block is, and I'm only putting kind of roughly in the area because I don't want to be too accurate and be doxing people, but basically on the right side of Lansdowne Road you have Justin Smith. On the other side you have Earl Martel and Ron Mackenzie. So Justin Smith is in a good location in terms of a witness hearing things and actually being able to differentiate the direction that the vehicle was travelling. He would hear it coming towards him. He would hear it going away from him. So his account will be pretty accurate. Now, I am going to acknowledge, because I know people are going to bring it up in the comments section, yes, this Bradley Wong guy has a criminal background in terms of burglary. The most recent thing I can see is 6 years ago. And I'm just going to say it now. I really don't care about his criminal history. I don't care about his past. Because he has someone else that is putting forward the same story. That means that his story is credible. I can understand why he wouldn't have wanted his name out there, because I know what people are going to do. There's going to be so many videos now of people basically tearing him apart, simply for coming forward as a witness. And I disapprove of that. Like I said, his past has nothing to do with this case. Maybe he could be a complete utter a-hole. Maybe he's not the nicest person on the planet. I don't know. I've never met the guy. I know nothing about the guy. All I know is that he made a tip in relation to this case, but he's not the only one that made a tip. And the tip that was put in by Justin Smith matches his tip. So that means that it doesn't matter what his past is like, doesn't matter what we think of him as an individual, it seems that his tip is credible. So I'm going to have a quick look at, first of all, the information that was released from that interview with Wong several months ago. So this is an excerpt, basically, that was from a Globe and Mail article. The neighbour spoke to the Globe, which is, same, and said they were working on a vehicle in their own yard when they heard the same loud 5-speed car come and go from the trailer about 6 times, from midnight to 5 a.m. After the children's disappearance, the neighbour considered it important information and reported it to police. The Globe agreed to protect the identity of the neighbour because of concerns for their safety in the community. So you'll note there that they didn't give the details about the headlights. Clearly that is because in doing so, that would have identified who he was. I just want to point out that after this was released, this is one of the big things that Daniel and all his cronies reacted to. Suddenly we got people putting it back on this neighbour and saying, well, isn't it just a bit sus that he was out working on his car between midnight and 5 a.m? And basically trying to deflect from this. And I am going to, after I finish going through the new Globe and Mail article, I'm going to play you a number of clips where Janie and Daniel were both trying to deflect from anything to do with the possibility of a neighbour putting in a tip. The amount of effort that they have put into trying to deflect from tips put in by the neighbours says to me that these are important tips. The fact that we have that Turkey guy apparently going to do a live stream tomorrow where he blames everything on this Brad Wong guy and saying that that's his suspect by the looks of it. Seems like that is going to be the new direction from Daniel and his family and followers. So we're going to hear a lot of negativity aimed at these neighbours to try and deflect from Daniel again. So I just want to remind people that all these two neighbours have done is basically give it a tip. Their stories pretty much match. So when you are seeing content by people who are trying to deflect by pointing out how this neighbour has a criminal record. Ask yourself, why is it so important to discredit this neighbour? If the tip wasn't important, nobody would care. Okay, so I'm just going to have a real quick look first at the relevant parts of the accompanying CBC article in terms of what they have quoted in their article. I'm not going to read the entire article, but I'm just going to go through the sections about Justin Smith and Bradley Wong, and then the section where they talk about Darren Geddes, because I just find it amusing that he is now being thoroughly exposed. So we have two people who live near Jack and Lily Sullivan's home told police they heard a vehicle coming and going in the middle of the night just hours before Nova Scotia children were reported missing, court documents show. Okay, so skipping on a bit, we have on May 9th, two constables had a conversation with Brad Wong, who lives near the home. He told them he heard a loud vehicle coming and going from that area in the early morning hours of May 2nd. He said his residence is at an elevated position from Daniel's residence and he could see vehicle lights over the treetops, said Corporal Charlene Curl in her written request to the court. He said the vehicle left 3 or 4 times after midnight and into the early hours of the morning. He said the vehicle would drive off in the distance and he could hear it stop and then return. So, driving off in the distance, he's hearing it heading towards Lansdowne Road. He said it remained in earshot the entire time. On May 17th, a constable took a statement from Justin Smith, who also lives in the area. Smith said he was awake and on Facebook during the early hours of May 2nd, around 1:30am. He heard a car on Highway 289 turn around by the railroad tracks near the area of Gairloch Road and Lansdowne Station. That intersection is near the home where the children went missing. It made noise, then went quiet. The vehicle was quiet for about 2 minutes, then drove towards Legg Road, the RCMP member wrote. Justin Smith later spoke with Brad Wong, who informed him Daniel's vehicle came and went 5 or 6 times that night. Wong said the car Smith heard was Daniel. So that's actually, he's talking about down on the bottom corner of Lansdowne Road. But from his property, I think it would be hard to know precisely where you heard that vehicle, other than knowing that you heard it coming in your general direction, you heard it turning around, and you heard it heading off. Given his distance from that corner, I'm not sure how he could be so certain that that is the exact location. But anyway, so this is a contradiction again. He told police he went to bed fairly early and didn't wake up until it was light the next morning, which doesn't necessarily fit with all the accounts we've heard. It doesn't fit with Malaya saying that she took the kids to bed around 9 or maybe 10. Because for me, fairly early would be before 10 o'clock. And yet Daniel claims that he doesn't know what time the children went to bed. He also claims that he didn't get inside till 10. So there's problems here with the timeline. She said Martel stayed up and was going to clean the house for her, but it wasn't clean when she got up, so she doesn't know what he did. Malaya said she was not woken up throughout the night and does not know when Daniel came to bed. Who else finds it incredibly interesting that this time round, Daniel was interviewed over the phone. We saw the last time this reporter interviewed Daniel and she seemed really, really uncomfortable. So I'm guessing that either Daniel is hiding out and didn't want to meet face-to-face anymore, or basically CBC are wanting to protect their staff and not have them face-to-face with Martel again. But we have here what she said in the news report. In a phone interview Friday, Martel said no one from the family left from the property that night. and they did not have any visitors. He said the RCMP never asked him about the vehicle coming and going. BS, Daniel. If they've had 2 witnesses mention it, of course they have asked you about it. So now he's trying to deflect and minimise. He wants people to think that, well, the RCMP have clearly already discarded this tip because they didn't ask him about it. And then he just comes out with the standard line, "I know the investigators work hard," said Martel. "They're exploring every lead." Brooks Murray has not responded to interview requests. In the Globe and Mail article, she actually did respond, so that is positive and we can look at that. Okay, so this gives a bit more clarification, and it says an investigator's comment, as in this Charlene Curl, in the same document said that as of July 16, the children's disappearance was not believed to be criminal in nature. So at this point in time, we don't know where they're standing. But I think that, like I said earlier, I think they are going to continue to investigate it under the Missing Persons Act until such time as they make an arrest, and then it will be labelled as criminal. Now here is a little bit on Darren Geddes. So first of all, we have that the RCMP declined a request for an interview on Friday, so they're still going silent. The records also show that police interviewed one of Brooks Murray's relatives, Dingbat Geddes. Geddes is believed to have appeared on a YouTube true crime show under the pseudonym Durwood Dingbat O'Grady, where he put forward a theory that Malaya put the children in a vehicle and sent them away before reporting them missing. It said Geddes noted his comments could be wrong, could be speculation. Dingbat has suggested in social media posts that Malaya may have been involved in their disappearance. But in his theory, he has also suggested he might know the location of the children. An RCMP investigator wrote. Yes, we've heard all this. May 30, 2 RCMP members met with Geddes, who told them he spoke with Martel a few weeks after the kids went missing, and also with Patty Pearson, Brooks Murray's grandmother, about the investigation. The constable said Geddes was confrontational and evasive to questions asked of him and wanted the police to provide him with information about the investigation. Dingbat really is the perfect name for this guy, the document said. He became upset when his questions were not answered. Oh, dear me. On June 26, Brooks Murray gave police a video recording of a phone conversation between Pearson and Geddes, who is Pearson's first cousin. Jeez, I'd love to hear that. The conversation was recorded on the evening of June 21st, and it's not clear if Geddes knew he was being recorded, but there appeared to be an expectation of privacy, the document said. It's not clear from the records exactly what Pearson and Geddes said during the conversation. CBC News interviewed Geddes on July 4th, and he shared similar theories. However, the information could not be verified. So they interviewed him on July 4th, and then they ditched the interview because they obviously realised he was a complete utter dingbat. Okay, have we got anything new down here? Doesn't look like it. Okay, moving on to, I believe this is the Globe and Mail article now, and this is about halfway through. So we have the documents which were filed in court by investigators in support of a records request detail the 2 accounts from neighbours about unexplained vehicle traffic near the children's trailer. Both Mr. Martel and Ms. Brooks Murray have said they didn't leave the home that night. And then we get the same information about Brad Wong. He could see vehicle lights over the treetops from his elevated home. Told police on May 9th that a loud vehicle came and went from the area of the trailer 3 or 4 times after midnight and into the early hours of the morning. Mr. Wong told police he remained in earshot the entire time that night. Then we have the Globe previously published a story including an account from Mr. Wong, which is what I read to you before. And here we have, in an interview Friday, Mr. Wong said he came forward to police and agreed to be identified by the Globe because of Mr. Martel's account that he was home all evening on May 1st into May 2nd. Mr. Wong said that it's inconsistent with what he heard and saw that night. Mr. Wong lives about 300 metres across the road and up a forested hill from the children's trailer. I still think it's got to be further back Gairloch Road. That's the only one that is close enough to their house. Mr. Martel did not respond to a request for comment. All of a sudden, after 5 months, seems like Daniel's not feeling overly talkative. Reached by phone by the Globe on Friday, Ms. Brooks-Murray, who previously told police she slept through the night, said she didn't hear any vehicles coming and going from the trailer overnight before her children disappeared. Well, of course she's going to say that, because otherwise she's implicated. And then we have comment of this rather sickening statement that she made. Ms. Brooks-Murray recently issued a statement to the volunteer missing persons group, Please Bring Me Home, describing how she misses Jack and Lily, asking the police to come forward with information that might help them locate them. She told the Globe that she hopes that message resonates. Actually, parts of that message resonates, but not for the reasons that you think, Malaya. Another neighbour, Justin Smith, told police that he heard a vehicle in the vicinity around 1:30 a.m. He said he heard a car turn around by the railroad tracks near the area where police found Lily's pink blanket and imprints of child-sized boot prints. So that does place the turnaround much, much further up Lansdowne Road than down on the corner, which the other ones seem to be reporting. So I think there may have been a mistake in the other article, because this sounds more likely. This makes sense. Although I'd really love to actually see that unredacted part. I'll look through the documents again tonight, but I don't think the versions that I got have got this information. Police later determined those imprints matched the type of boot Lily was wearing when she disappeared. Mr. Smith told police the car made a noise and then went quiet for about 2 minutes. After that, he said it drove towards Legg Road, which is in the same direction as the trailer where the children lived. The court documents still contain significant redactions, including details that police say must be withheld or risk compromising their investigation. When they say compromising their investigation, that means they are investigating Daniel Martel, Malaya Brooks-Murray, Janie McKenzie, and probably, to some extent now, Darren Geddes, for trying to put in his 2 bob worth and steer the investigation in the wrong direction. Then it says here, such as specific questions asked on polygraph tests, records police have sought, and some of the people they have interviewed. Now, this is kind of veering away from the vehicles, but since we're looking at Globe and Mail, and I know a lot of you don't have subscriptions, I will continue with this anyway. So the documents detail efforts to track Mr. Martel and Ms. Murray Brooks' digital footprints in the days before and after the kids went missing, such as scanning their phone images and GPS coordinates. That includes attempts to corroborate the mother's story about calls she made in the hours after their disappearance, a probe complicated by the fact that she later deleted the Text Plus app on her phone, probably to hide that 8:28 a.m. phone call. telling police she didn't need it anymore. Doing so erased the data from her phone records. The newly unredacted documents also reveal the challenges investigators have faced around online misinformation linked to the case. They detail the RCMP's interaction with Dingbat Geddes, a cousin of Miss Malaya Brooks' grandmother Patty Pearson, who spread a theory that the children had been abducted by their own mother. In June, as a guest on a YouTube true crime show while using a pseudonym, Mr. Geddes speculated that Ms. Murray Brooks had dressed the kids on the morning they disappeared and put them in a vehicle with the intention of sending them to the... I had that nailed before, but I've forgotten again. No, I'm not going to try. First Nation, where she has family. Her brother, Hayden Murray Smith, complained to the police about this when he visited the RCMP's Bible Hill detachment with her that same month, the documents show. Geddes got involved and was going all over the internet saying things Hayden said. Nothing Geddes is saying is making sense. According to a summary of his interview with the RCMP submitted by Corporal Charlene Curl to the court. The theory that the children are somehow alive, a suggestion that police have consistently said is without evidence and hiding on the First Nation Reserve, has been repeated by Mr. Martel and others online. Reached by the Globe on Friday, Mr. Geddes repeated his belief that the children are alive and on the reserve. Honestly, Darren, it's time to just let it go. You are not doing anything helpful here by pushing this narrative. And I don't suppose it's actually occurred to you how much pain that the people who care about Lily and Jack must feel every time they hear you pushing this ridiculous narrative. I really am curious to know what is in this for Geddes. He's got to be getting something out of this. Otherwise, why continue to make yourself look like a complete utter fool pushing a story that nobody believes in the hopes that someone might decide to believe you? Staff Sergeant Rob McCammon, the acting RCMP officer in charge of major crime and behavioural sciences, has said the police are awaiting forensic results and are continuing to follow the evidence using specialty units and technology to determine the circumstances of Jack and Lily's disappearance. He said the children's family members are cooperating with the police and there is no evidence of an abduction. So here we have the information that they are actually still waiting on forensic results of forensic tests and stuff. So I'm going to go through some clips with you, which are basically Janie and Daniel doing their best to discredit this neighbour who made the tip. Which of course shows you that, for starters, clearly the RCMP spoke to Daniel about this tip and he's concerned enough to want to discredit the neighbour. But also, they are both concerned enough to put the effort in to try and discredit this neighbour, which says to me that these tips from these two neighbours about the vehicle are hugely significant. I think that all but confirms the fact that the children, whatever happened, occurred before midnight on the Friday morning. In other words, whatever happened occurred on the Thursday. I'm also going to, at the end, take a look at timeline in terms of morning phone calls, because I'm thinking, given all these back and forth trips with the vehicle, that there's probably some reason, there was probably some delay in terms of that 10 o'clock phone call. But I'll come back to that at the end of this video.
The neighbor, yes, was the one that said we had the party. And to take the heat off of him, yes, because he's been in trouble before with the law. Yes. He knows he knew that Jack and Lily lived here because the kids went the same bus together. He has 2 boys. And yes, the RCMP probably did question him.
So note that straight up, she's turned it back on the neighbour, talking about he has a criminal record, and, well, of course he knew that Jack and Lily lived here because his children catch the same bus. And then she says, and yes, the RCMP probably did question him. What she means by that, or what she wants people to infer from that, is that the RCMP probably are looking at him as a suspect. She's doing everything in her power in this particular part of what she's saying to convince people that this neighbour is dodgy AF, and that the police probably spoke to him or interviewed him more because of the fact that he has a criminal record, not because he is essentially a witness. So what Janie wants us to focus on here is that this guy is someone with a criminal record, not focus on the fact that he has quite possibly given a very, very, very important tip to the RCMP, one that seems to have been backed up by another neighbour.
I know, talking about the old road up at the top of the hill, I can hear people when they go up that road. My dog lets me know when they go up that road. And the only one that goes up that road is usually my neighbor, and he has a really, really noisy truck. Believe me, a really noisy truck, so we know when he's coming from miles away. But no one has any reason to go up that old road. There was a tree across the old road, so the only way anybody could get up that road is an old road if they walked. The RCMP cut the tree out of there so they could get up to search. So there's no way anybody's going to walk up that old road. There's no way.
So it's pretty clear what Janie has done here. Now, we are hearing her say that the only person that goes up that road up the back is the neighbour, who has a very loud vehicle. I'm wondering if perhaps when Daniel was asked about driving back and forth on that evening, or between midnight and the early hours on the 2nd of May, that maybe the RCMP didn't tell him who it was that made that report. Or maybe this is based on what was written in that article from the Globe and Mail. So Janie's trying to get out ahead of it and come up with a story of, well, if someone heard a loud vehicle, it had to have been the neighbour. It couldn't possibly have been us, it had to have been the neighbour. See, we've got this neighbour who drives up and down that road behind us in a loud vehicle, and we can hear it so clearly. And then she goes over the top with the explanation of that is the only person who would drive on that road, nobody else. Meaning, not Daniel, don't look at him. And saying that, the only way you could go up that road is if you walked. The road's blocked off. But my question to that is, if the road is blocked off, then how did this neighbour get on and off the road? Her story just doesn't quite gel. In one breath you're saying the neighbour drives up and down this road, and the next breath you're saying nobody can drive up and down this road because it's been blocked off up until when the neighbour or when the RCMP come and move the tree. So she's doing two things there. She's trying to shift the focus onto the neighbour. Hey, we've got a neighbour with a really loud vehicle. And I believe this was after that article came out where they quoted a neighbour as having heard a loud vehicle going back and forth. But then she also tries to distract people by saying, well, nobody can drive up and down that road up behind us anyway. You know what's really significant about that? That early bit of information that came out in the Globe and Mail, there was no information given about a possible route for that vehicle. Because, remember, they were trying to protect their source at that point in time. So they didn't even mention about the headlights. They just said that a neighbour heard a vehicle coming and going from that Gairloch Road property. So there was never any suggestion that this vehicle was going up and down on the road, the dirt road, behind their property. And yet Janie had to defend that and say, oh, nobody drives that road other than the neighbour. That to me says that quite likely the route that was taken was up over the back behind the property and across to Lansdowne Road. I'm guessing Janie didn't think ahead and stop and think, well, if I make this statement now, trying to deflect and make people look at the neighbour, that if the full information comes out about the tip that was made, then this is going to look really, really bad for us, because I've just given additional information with regards to a vehicle travelling back and forth that wasn't provided to the public. I think I need to go back over all the things that Janie has said, because it seems like she's not overly good at protecting her son. There's so much leakage in her statements, and when she says stuff like this, it seems so very clear that she's essentially just there going, yeah, no, it wasn't Daniel who was driving up and down that road. Don't look this way, look the other way.
And to take the heat off of him, yes, because he's been in trouble before with the law. Yes. He knows he knew that Jack and Lily lived here because the kids went the same bus together, and he has 2 boys. And yes, the RCMP probably did question him. And they're not people to deal with. And they already started rumors about us having a party here, which was not true. So I just would like to keep things quiet here. We've always been quiet. We don't bother anybody. None of the neighbors bother any other neighbors. It's just one particular neighbor that is a disturber.
Some of that is repetition, but what she says there is that this neighbour's making accusations to take the heat off him. So again, she is trying to put the blame on this neighbour. And this is what their new narrative is going to be. You can bet everything we hear now for the next week or so is going to be aimed at making this neighbour look like the person responsible for all this. If he was responsible, the RCMP would have figured this out by now. Now, she also goes on to talk about how, you know, this person's not the person to deal with. They already started rumours about a party, which wasn't true, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. And then she does we'd like to keep things quiet here. In other words, we don't want people to really focus on this. And she's like, you know, all the neighbours keep to themselves and don't cause problems, except this one neighbour who is a S stirrer. So again, she's working hard to discredit this guy and say this guy's just doing it to stir up trouble. Look, he already stirred up trouble by talking about there being a party there. Now, here's the thing. In terms of that original rumour, and I think I need to go back and have another look at that, because I kind of, put it in my mind, but I didn't really do much about it. Let's say there is some truth in what this guy said. Now, I'm not sure that the original story that came out necessarily said anything about a party. I think the original information that came out was that it was a math house. Well, tick, that's been confirmed. The other information that came out was that there had been quite a lot of vehicles on the property on the Thursday night before the children were reported missing. And then somehow that got translated to the story of it was a big party. I believe that was actually people just taking those two bits of information, running with them and claiming it was a big party. Maybe this was something that Daniel did to deflect, to say, well, this person's accusing us of having a big party. And no, we didn't have a big party. Because remember, in his interview where he's sitting down in a room with the CBC reporter, he says something along the lines of, no, there was no one there the night before the children went missing. He was very specific about mentioning the time frame. But I can't help thinking now that maybe they called in the troops. Maybe something happened Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, and various family members turned up to help at 1407 Gairloch Road. We hear speculation about a lab having to be demolished and gotten rid of. I mean, why do you need to make multiple overnight trips? Because these are two little children. So maybe there is truth in that. So maybe this neighbour did see a lot of vehicles on the property that night. Because maybe people were jumping into action to help with a cover-up. Speculation. But I think we should take another look at what was originally said in terms of people being there on the Thursday night.
The ATV has not been on this property in the last 5 years or so, because my neighbor, which I'm not going to mention, is known for stealing property. And that was one thing that I did not want him to take.
Again, jumping in to make sure that people know that her neighbour has a criminal record. And yes, he does have a record for stealing property. And I just want to point out before all the drama begins, because like I said, we know it will, there is a huge leap. You would have to make a huge leap to believe that someone who steals property is likely to kidnap children and do something to them. That's not how it works. So that his criminal record has nothing to do with this case. In terms of being a witness, His criminal record has no bearing on that because we know there is another witness who gives a statement that basically corroborates what he has said. So, when the blaming starts, let's try and remember that. Let's try and remember what is important here. A neighbour gave a tip about a vehicle going back and forth from that property. Another neighbour gave a tip about hearing a vehicle going back and forth from that property. Timelines match, location matches. That is what is important here. So when all the gaslighting begins, let's try and keep focused on that.
Now, I believe this person, and I don't know if it's the same person or not, but I believe this person has mentioned a couple of things. One of the things mentions is that he heard a vehicle driving around at 5 a.m. Or at some point, a 5-speed vehicle. Is there a vehicle that has visited you? Maybe not that night, but in other nights, maybe they're confused about the night that they heard this. Have you ever had a late night visitor with a loud vehicle?
No, I don't know anybody with the 5-speed other than my brother. And my brother has a wife and a family, so he's not driving out there in the middle of the night.
And is it like a vehicle that's loud?
No, it's a brand new Subaru.
Oh, okay. And so,
and it's not customized or anything either, so there's no loud exhaust or anything like that.
Just like a normal vehicle. And
Yeah.
So again, this turkey guy is doing his best to make excuses for Daniel, which is really sickening. But he's trying to downplay this witness statement. And obviously this is before these documents came out. Now, straight away, he's like, well, you haven't had anyone like that around. Not on that night or anything like that. What I find interesting is that straight away, he goes to making excuses for his brother, making an alibi for his brother Justin. I must check. I'm thinking, I gather that Malaya may be communicating with Belinda a little bit now. If so, I'm curious to know if Belinda has been able to check and verify what Malaya originally said to Belinda in terms of that Justin was living in the trailer at the RV up the back with Janie. We know that he was having marital problems. We've heard that said. We heard that speculation that he was living on the property. And then basically that's all gone very, very quiet. And now we're hearing him being the happily married man who wouldn't possibly be driving around at night because he's a happily married man. Notice he also offers up a modified exhaust. Now, when you talk to me about a loud vehicle, I'm not necessarily going to think straight away about a modified exhaust. I might think maybe that car is running on 2.5 cylinders instead of 4. I might think maybe the exhaust manifold needs replacing. Maybe there is a hole in the exhaust. Maybe part of the exhaust has dropped off and is held in place with a coat hanger. So I'm not going to jump straight away to that this vehicle might have a modified exhaust. There's so many other possibilities, particularly in that area. We're looking at an area where a low socioeconomic area. There's not a lot of people in this area that are really flushed with money. So you probably will have vehicles around there that have exhaust issues. Split manifold gaskets or completely non-existent manifold gaskets. Or holes in the exhaust. Or, like I said, running on 2-3 cylinders. Things that happen when you can't afford regular upkeep for your vehicle. So he's basically offered up an alibi for his brother. He's introduced his brother into the scenario and then offered up an alibi. And instead of going with all the, what I would think would be some of the more logical possibilities, he's gone straight to, nobody has a modified exhaust. I'm still curious about that big oil stain on the driveway. I would like to know what the vehicle was that was there, that was parked regularly in that spot, and then was clearly removed prior to when Lily and Jack were reported missing. Now, here's my question. If this all happened on the Thursday, which I believe it did, and we have this vehicle that's running back and forth between midnight and the early hours of the morning, I'm wondering why the 911 call wasn't put in until 10 o'clock. I'm thinking that the plan had been to make that call earlier. And why am I saying that? I'm just going to go through a few things out of the documents. So first of all, we have a statement from Cindy saying that on May 2nd, there was a missed call from Malaya at 8:28 a.m. We also have Malaya stating she heard the kids playing in their bedroom around 8 a.m. They woke Meadow up, she took her to bed and turned the TV on. And then we have the story of her hearing silence around 9:40 and calling 911. And everyone has been commenting since day one, why is it that the report is that the last time the children were heard was around 8 o'clock, and yet we didn't get this 911 call till 10 a.m. I'm thinking that perhaps maybe Daniel was so wiped out that he didn't wake up in time for the plan to be put into action. I'm thinking that maybe Malaya rang Cindy at 8:28 because that was the plan, to say that the children hadn't been seen since 8 a.m. And maybe she realised that it wasn't going to work because Daniel wasn't awake. Maybe that is why it is a missed call, because maybe she hung up when she realised there was a problem. So then we also have Janie saying that she got a call from her brother at 8:48 a.m. and then that she originally said that she learned the children were gone around 8:48 a.m. And then before she talked to her brother, and later clarified the timeline in her second account. We know that Janie is not the sharpest tool in the shed. So if her role was to basically say that this is when she found out that the kids were missing, and then maybe the statement from her was taken before Daniel and Malaya could say to her, look, we actually, because we rang the RCMP so late, you need to say you found out later. Or maybe it's just because in her brain, because that was the arranged time, she didn't fix it in her brain and was still going back to the original narrative. Now, there is something missing from what Janie told the RCMP here, and you'll pick it up. I'll show you in a minute. Because we have her talking to her brother at 8:48, and then he called her again at around 10:19. After all this had happened, which is referring to her supposedly finding Malaya out in the driveway and then going searching up on the hill and everything. But I just want to go back to this screenshot from when Janie did her interview with CBC. Janie spent a heck of a lot of time on the phone with her brother that day. Now, we can't see if there were any calls prior to 8:48, but you have her 8:48 phone call, which she told the RCMP about. Then you have a 10:19 phone call, which she also told the RCMP about. But then you have a missed call at 10:30 and another call at 10:35. She left that bit of information out. And I've actually discussed that in more depth in another video, so I won't go into it too much there. But she does claim that she arrived back after the RCMP had arrived, and that when she was out searching or whatever it was, she forgot her phone. But the RCMP arrived at 10:27 and she took a call at 10:19, 8 minutes before the RCMP arrived. Well, that doesn't leave much leeway in terms of her then going searching and then getting back in time for a 10:35 call. But the point I want to make here is that we have phone calls being made in that block of time between 8:28 and 9 o'clock, quite early. And yet Malaya carefully avoided mentioning that she made that phone call. She deleted her app, and the RCMP found out about it because Cindy said, oh yeah, I had this missed phone call at 8:28. If Malaya was in bed dozing with Meadow, why would she be ringing her mother at 8:28? So I think that the 10 a.m. 911 call was later than they had anticipated, and something delayed their plans, essentially. Maybe it was because Malaya couldn't get through to Cindy at 8:28. Don't know. Maybe it was because Daniel was still asleep and was just completely knocked out because he'd been out driving around till 5 a.m. in the morning. But I think we can be kind of confident that there was definitely a vehicle out and about between midnight and the early hours of the morning. And it appears that there may have been a delay in when they rang the RCMP in terms of when they originally decided to, which could well point to someone not waking up in time to put the plan into action. Just a bit of speculation there. So I know I diverted a little bit in this video in terms of looking at additional things that were in the articles and also having another look at this 8:28 phone call. But I think it does tie in with the vehicle movement, because if Malaya was ringing her mother at 8:28, then that says to me that definitely she was already up at 8:28 for starters, but that potentially the plan was to ring 911 earlier than when they did. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that, leave you with all that to think about. I should be back at probably the normal time tomorrow. Today was going to be my day off, hence the early video. That early video was going to be dropped at the regular time, and then I was heading out to the cinemas this afternoon. But then all these articles dropped, all these news videos dropped, and I realised that I would be working on this evening, so hence the reason that other video dropped early, so that I could do this one tonight and drop a second video for today. So if, in case you were wondering why the slightly odd times in terms of release of my videos. So yes, tomorrow I should be back to a normal schedule. I don't have plans for having a day off tomorrow. Maybe a bit of time in the morning just to take the dogs for a walk, since they were left at home for 3 or 4 hours by themselves today. But other than that, I think you can expect a regular video at a regular time. Anyway, enough waffling. Thanks for listening. If you are new to my channel, please subscribe. Also, please hit that like button. Get this video out there into the algorithm. And please leave a comment below. Thank you, and I'll catch you in the next one.